I never fully believe you until you really.
Yeah.
Does that wait?
Are we live? We are live. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. We're very excited to be here, and I'm so happy because I have I love everyone in the company, but I have two of my people I really love.
You know this is live, right?
It's live. We're live.
I love you a lot. We've had the pleasure of working together many, many years. So Joyce, who has joined when we probably had, I don't know, like 7
20,
people.
yeah.
First office that had no ceiling.
Yeah,
Joyce
I remember
accepted, joined us out of her postdoc program, and is now in charge of all of research. Jacquie, who has many claims to fame, but helps keep us very straight and narrow, making sure that we are doing all the legal work that we need to be working.
Compliance things.
The number of contracts that I see you processing through is always amazing. But plus, Jacquie is also her own YouTube star and has all kinds of videos singing about the joys of parenting.
We can talk about that
We can talk
later.
about it another time. But it's one of my favorite things. I mean, how many other people have lawyers who are also YouTube stars and singing about the joys of parenting? So we're very excited about International Women's Day, and just wanted to celebrate. I think a lot of the women that have influenced me in my life, and especially the women at 23andMe. So I think we're lucky because I think we actually have almost a 50-50 environment here of women and men, and I think part of what makes 23andMe such a wonderful place to be is that we actually do have this diversity. And we look for gender diversity, we look for all kinds of diversity, but particularly having the gender diversity and that balance makes us, I think, it makes it a joy to come in every day. So with that, we'll kick on to questions.
Cool. Happy International Women's Day. In the spirit of this day, who is a woman who's inspired you? We'll start with Jacquie.
A woman?
A woman.
Oh, I got to talk about at least 2. Okay. Well, aside from the 2 beautiful women that I'm here with today, I will start with Kathy Hibbs, who's downstairs working very hard, keeping the company on track to do all the legal and compliant things that we do. I've had the privilege of working with her. She's my boss. For 7 years now across 2 companies, and it's just so inspiring to be working with somebody who is so wise and gracious and knowledgeable and such a great leader. The other woman, to be totally stereotypical, is my mom. And, as I became a young woman myself and moved from just seeing my mom as someone who told me what to do, and didn't understand me, to a young professional and also a mom myself, and understanding her story. She came here when she was 25 from Vietnam, fled Vietnam like in April of 1975 with nothing but a pillowcase with some clothes and a couple bars of gold. Her story and what she's been able to accomplish here, including raising me, is just so inspiring. And I know there's so many women out there just like her that, aside from those 2 women, all women, moms especially, who are trying to do it all, inspire me.
Anne?
My turn. So I think I have to. I'm going to start. Obviously, my mother is somebody who's inspired me a lot. But one thing I think that is really true. Diane von Furstenberg always has this quote saying, "I've never met a woman who's not strong." And I think one thing I've learned within 23andMe is through our stories. So we have over 10,000 documented stories. We get stories every single day coming in about what's happened with, what people have learned, what's happened. And so we get to know a lot of our customers pretty well. And the resilience and the strength of women universally is just inspiring, and really, like, it's one of the things that keeps me fueled. People ask all the time, like, why do you come into work every day? And I'm like, because I love the stories and the customer stories, and a lot of the women's stories of what they've learned, from the health to the ancestry and how they manage, is incredibly inspiring to me. Second, my mom is just a force. I mean, my mom, for people who know my mom, she's she's totally uncontrollable. And she is, she's somebody who taught me that there's a time and a place to break rules. And there's a time and a place to sort of follow and be obedient. And then there's a time and place to be really, change the rules and have a perspective, look beyond what is possible. So my mother has been the one who really taught me more than anything about absolutely unrealistic expectations and then going for those.
Joyce.
Okay, my turn. So I guess I'll do two as well. So one that's more recent. So since I was diagnosed with cancer last year, one person that I've grown to really admire is the notorious RBG, aka Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has dealt with cancer twice in her life, crushed it, still is a Supreme Court justice. It's kind of dope. And then, of course, I mean, yeah, I guess it's maybe not surprising that we are who we are today because of our moms. Like, my mom also immigrated here in her 20s, and I think, it never honestly occurred to me not to go into a technical field because that's what my mom did. And, it's always really interesting to me today, like a lot of discussion about how girls are maybe not encouraged or maybe even actively discouraged from like following that kind of path. And I just never had that. My mom was a computer programmer. She was also a chemist. Like, she always encouraged me to be curious, ask questions, figure things out for myself. It literally never occurred to me that I couldn't do all those things and that I wouldn't succeed at them. So I find like in my life today, like a lot of the weird things that I saw my mom do as a working mom, like I do those things now and I'm like, I totally get it. That is why you did that stuff. So it's just watching her made me know that it was possible.
Great. Going off of that, how do you guys find work-life balance, especially if you're a mom? How do you balance between a family and having a career?
You start. Your turn. It's like scales on a piano. Yeah. Up and down.
I think about this a lot. A lot of my friends are also working moms, and we talk about it a lot. I think, one thing that I think is really important to understand is that this concept of like, quote unquote, like having it all is a really dangerous one, because at the end of the day, you have a limited amount of time and energy, and you have to decide how you're going to apply those resources to the things that are important in your life. You can't really optimize everything independently, right? So for me, it's really been about like prioritizing what's important to me and sort of setting limitations about like, what do I want to do? What's the max of this I want to do? What's the minimum of that I want to do? So, really deciding like, okay, this is how much, I'm willing to work. This is how much I'm willing to travel. These are, I want to take my kids to school every morning, even if I can't pick them up. What do I want to prioritize and accept the things that I've deprioritized? Like, I'm just not going to do that perfectly.
I think that's totally true. I think that it's lovely, like when you don't have children and you don't necessarily have the family and you can just do whatever you want. And I think that's part of it is when you have the family is that you made a choice. Like you have to prioritize, and you can't. I strongly feel like you can't do everything, and you have to then make decisions about what your priorities are. And similar, like some of the advice I got is, I try to only speak once a month or once a quarter, or try to accept like some kind of external. I haven't gone to New York in years. I finally booked. I was like, I'll be in New York in 2020. And so you have to decide what is actually the best use of your time. And I think there's a constant process of evaluating what is the best use of your time, and realizing you have to also prioritize yourself. I think that's one thing that happens a lot to working parents is that they end up focusing on their career, they end up focusing on their kids, and then they forget. And so, for instance, like I have to work out every day. And so I have to find that time, and I work on my schedule to find that time. I try to like take stair walking meetings or like we have treadmill desks in here, but part of it is that, in some ways you can think about there's all kinds of little opportunities that you waste time as well. And I think as you become a working parent, you become a lot more efficient about how to optimize that.
I've had a meeting with you while you're working out.
It's pretty fun. I just worked out now.
Works out pretty well.
We should totally do a Facebook Live working out. Oh my God. That would be the ultimate efficiency.
That's right.
Next time.
So, you guys have really covered it. Prioritization. I think also understanding that the priorities constantly need to be changing. Yes. So, if you're working on a project, it may require you really to lean in for a while to the work part of your life, knowing that you need to take time to prioritize something else when that period is done. I also try really hard to work out every day and prioritize myself so that I can be a better person for all of these other things I can do. I also push a lot of the family balance and kid balance stuff onto my kids. And have found they're remarkably resilient and able to do things for themselves. And so I think that's a couple of things that are a secret.
Actually, if I want to add one more thing, which is another thing that I find a lot of very high-functioning independent women do is that they're not very good at asking for help. So I think it's really important to both ask for and give help where it's needed. I've gotten an incredible amount of support from my parents, my mother-in-law, my husband, everybody does stuff, and you have to ask for it because otherwise people aren't going to know that you need it. It's not a sign of weakness, or you're not burdening other people. You're just being there, and they're helping you be there.
I think that's true. I think asking for help is really important. And is one thing, one of my board members said that. He's like, look, you need to outsource the things that are not critical to you. Don't do it. If I'm trying to do laundry, find a way. So similar to you as there, kids can step up more and more. I do think that's actually
they can fold laundry.
They can totally do. They can actually do laundry. They love it. But I think the more you actually, in some ways, do prioritize yourself, forcing your children as well to see that you've set up some balance and some parameters, and then they will step up. And I think that's actually a great lesson for kids.
Yeah, and setting a good example for them so that when they grow up, they don't think that they should have to try to do everything themselves.
That's great advice. Jacquie, this question's for you from Jacob on Instagram. What inspired you to pursue your current career?
So a career in the law. So my mom would say the law was meant for me because I've always been really good at arguing. But I did go to law school because I wanted to be able to serve others and give others a voice, especially those that were not able to advocate for themselves, was really the reason I ended up going to law school. We did not have a lawyer in the family. I did not grow up around lawyers generally, so I actually had no idea that there was this whole world of practicing law in a corporate setting. And as I went through law school and went into a firm and learning about this area of practice, it became particularly interesting to me, and get to do it in a place where we're also serving others and advancing medicine and people's ability to advocate for themselves in the healthcare system has been amazing.
We keep you busy, don't we?
Yeah.
We're good at that.
I don't do laundry anymore.
Joyce, so you recently wrote an article for Stat News on the lack of diversity hindering genetic studies. Stella from Instagram doesn't have a question, but really loved that article.
Oh, I'm glad.
And my question is, what was your inspiration to write that?
Well, I mean, I think you can kind of see in the article, it is pretty personal for me, right? On the one hand, I've been in genetics for a long time. I love it. I think it's got an incredible amount of potential, and we're just starting to scratch the surface of the ways that it can really help people. But the reality is that, it's not helping everybody to the same degree yet, right? And, I'm not European, my husband's not European, and my children are biracial. That makes it even more complicated. I think Jacquie can probably also relate, right? I think it's really important that we get these benefits like available to everyone. And that's not easy, right? Because the way the system is set up, it's easier to do the research where the funding is. It's easier to do the research where the funding is and the people around that area. And oftentimes those are people who are of European descent. And so it's great that we're making these strides, but we really actually have to put in the effort to make sure that it's applicable to everyone.
Awesome. And this one's for you. Mm-hmm. How does 23andMe prioritize the development of female leaders?
I don't necessarily look at female leaders versus male leaders. We want to be able to encourage people to be the best they can be. And one of the things I always say is everyone's great at something. And it's important for me within the building is that people come to 23andMe and that they feel like they constantly have opportunities to learn. And honestly, like, I can't hire someone who's like Joyce or Jacquie and then say you're going to just do the same thing all the time and it's not going to keep stimulating you and that you're not going to keep learning. And there's a responsibility that I have for making sure that there's opportunities for all my employees to grow. And when they want, one thing that I love is there's people who will be on, Joyce's team and then move over to the marketing team. And I kind of love that. Like, I feel like, especially if I look back at my 20s, like one of the best things to do is like get diversity of experiences. And so within the building, I think about that as people should take the long view for what they're doing, is not necessarily think about just like, oh, I want to be promoted in this way, but like, how is it that you can actually get the most number of experiences? That said, I have found that there are differences, at review time. I find that there will be some stereotypical differences of like women who will be, more perfectionist or more critical of themselves and, less willing to advocate for themselves. So I tend to, like even in meetings sometimes, in our executive team meetings, sometimes I'll have, someone who's a woman who's, presenting something and I'll see she got talked over or she backed down too quickly. And I'll text and I'll be like, speak up. You got a great idea. Like, keep doing it. And I feel like that's part of my job sometimes is for everyone has insecurities and everyone can sort of, have their, doubts about what they're doing. And the more I can actually help encourage women and men, but I do see it happen sometimes more with women, advocate for themselves, I think then it trickles down. Mm-hmm. And I want those bosses then to do the same and advocate for their ideas and also, frankly, advocate for pay and comp and recognize that their self-worth.
This question is for all three of you. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite part about being a boss? We'll start with you, Jacquie.
Actually, just listening to Anne, my favorite part of being a boss is getting to work with an amazing team and being positioned being positioned to really push people to reach their potential and get to know them as people and learn about what they're interested in doing and helping support them grow as professionals and also as people. I think the hardest thing to do is getting comfortable with pushing people to be uncomfortable. Like, it's easy to do what you know how to do, but putting yourself out there and not being afraid to make a mistake or fail and providing that safety net so that you can grow. And it's, it's not totally linear up. There's going to be moments where you make a mistake and that's okay. Having the support of both a boss and a team to help catch you when that happens, I feel like it's my responsibility as a boss.
That's great.
You
Joyce?
go next.
Oh, fine. I think it's very similar to like what Jacquie is saying. I think for me, like, I don't see my role as like, I think maybe what I would have thought as a kid a boss does, which is to tell other people what to do, but rather, help people do what they need to do as well as possible, support them to be productive, to be happy, to learn, to develop, right? Give them what they need. In many ways, I see myself in almost like a support role for them. How can I help you create the structure, create the direction, create the resources, create the skills that are going to allow the scientists on our team, like, lead us into the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's very similar to that. It's what I enjoy the most is really seeing people that I can create an infrastructure that allows people to flourish. And, sometimes we make mistakes, but you can, and you iterate, you keep, you try to keep humble. And I think that's where, like, one thing I've learned is companies really are, company culture is really reflective of the leader. And it's important for me to set a tone within the building of, like, how do we treat each other? How do we think about, work-life balance? How do we think about the work? How do we make decisions? People always ask the question, like, we're very morally, we're a mission-driven company. And that trickles down into, how we manage and how we lead everyone within the company. So I feel like in some ways, like, my job is mostly to inspire people and to get people often to think about how to get around the rules. No. I love going to people. I was like, no. Pretend that there's no financial limits and there's no regulatory world. What would you do? And it's fun to get people to think that they are actually capable of things that they never once imagined. And again, it's one of the things that's really fun. Like, I look back on, like, those days. Like, I remember interviewing Joyce in that little room, and
with no ceiling.
Yeah, with no ceiling. And how far it's come, like, for both of us in that way, and recognizing that everyone's always growing, and it's really fun. Like, that's the best part, is, like, seeing people flourish, and people flourish in different environments. And that's why I said everyone's good at something, and you have to find the right environment that enables you to really flourish.
Okay, we have time for one last question,
Okay.
and this is from me. So we talked about prioritizing the things that are important to you, especially yourself. What's the one thing, maybe it's a part of your morning routine, or Anne, I know you love to exercise, but what's the one thing that you would say you can't live without doing for yourself? How do you take care of yourself? What's your...
Oh, the one thing I can't live without is probably caffeine. I like the workout routine. I'm a runner, and I definitely can feel myself get a little stir crazy if I don't somehow exert myself at least a couple days, whether it's going to a class or going out for.
I'm just curious, what's your fastest marathon?
Oh, stop it! Oh my God.
Good one.
But it's 2:57. No, but and that also is a reflection of the culture of our company, to be able to support, like, flexibility to do things like on the weekends go run 20 miles, or during the week, take a little time in the morning to be able to get out there to do that. I feel like having the happy whole person is important for us as a culture, for all our employees, and that being something that we can model as leaders.
You were part of my inspiration to run my first and last half.
I feel that way. I am not a runner. I always said, I was like, I run when someone chases me. But other than that, like, it's like, because I love to work out, but I do not like to run. I have to work out. Like, for me, there's, like, part of just, like, the body, like, just getting that freedom. Like, ideally I work out and I'm like, have alone time. I can actually process, I can think. It's why I often bike to work. But if I don't get that kind of just alone time and that body movement, I am, like, yesterday I didn't work out, and finally I was on a call. I was like, I have to go. And tomorrow I must work out, or I worked out last night. But it's by far, I think exercise really impacts people, and I think people don't necessarily even recognize how much the lack of exercise can impact their mood. But I absolutely, like, it's like my kids totally know that. Like, I when I used to do the workout Insanity, and I remember my son, I told him, I was like, you watch your sister. And he was like, Chloe, mommy's doing Insanity. We have to be good. So my kids totally know. But it just, like, it makes a difference on everything. And I think that also goes to that work-life balance. Like, I can then work so much better. I'm so much more efficient so long as I've worked out with a little coffee.
Joyce?
I don't drink coffee, so it's definitely not caffeine. I think being like a partial introvert, it's also like having some time to myself every day to just sort of think and like pull back and just sort of process what's happened. It's a lot of times when I used that time to think about, something that's happened and like, how do I want to handle that, or what does it mean? Or if I did something good, like what did I did that was good so I can repeat that. If I did something that was not so great, like what did I do? How did I come there? How could I do it differently, right? So like having a little bit of time to sort of like pull in and think is really helpful to me.
That's great. Well, thank you.
I love that you're an introvert.
I'm not a partial introvert.
I was going to say, you are one of the more outgoing, funny people I have ever met in my life.
Yeah, but eventually it's like, that's enough people.
That's called limits, boundaries.
Right.
Work-life balance here. I'm now done with you, Anne.
That's right.
We're out.
That's all the time we have for today, but thank you.
Happy International Women's Day.
Yay.